What's up, dudes? What did I do with my Gatorade? Good grief. Hold on. Okay. So I started reading the next header, and I think this is part 16. Yes, I think I just uploaded part 17. I mean, it's 15. The dog wanted to go out. So I had read probably, I don't know, through a whole little header section, and she wanted to go out. So I paused the video to let her out. And I can pause it. I don't know for how long. I don't know how long I got. Maybe 3 minutes or something. And then it timed out and it stopped the recording of the video. And since I don't yet have any knowledge really of how to hook this up to OBS and edit it, splice it together, whatever, I'm just gonna start over. So this is Tavistock, Social Engineering the Masses. We're still in the television chapter, and the next header is called Propaganda Campaign. Okay. All right. Even in the age of the internet, blogospheres, and other new generation contraptions of mass dissemination of information, the Times and the Post, both Bilderberg and CFR companies, set the tone for most news coverage, defining issues and setting the limits of respectable opinion. And I remember when I was literally commentating on this the last time I read it 20 minutes ago. Respectable opinion. It's crazy, okay? What is considered an unrespectable opinion? I mean, people get freaking so mad at me literally all the time because of my opinions. And I don't even think most of them are controversial, at all. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with this thing, but it's kind of sliding down. Sliding down, down, down. Okay, anyway, so, and then people just get all butthurt and offended about, the most benign of opinions. It's bro, chillax. Chillax. That's so stupid. Anyways, okay. Consider, for example, Sudan or Libya to illustrate how the mainstream ruling class journalists help make foreign policy through a blatant propaganda campaign. Quote, saturation reporting from a crisis region, emergency calls for help broadcast on the electronic media, such as the one recently on the CFR-run PBS, televised pictures of refugees, such as the one recently on CFR-run Fox and CNN, lurid stories of mass grapes, which are surely designed to titillate and as much as to provoke outrage, reproachful evocations of the Rwandan genocide, demands that something must be done. Quote, how can we stand idly by, etc.? Editorials in the CFR-run New York Times, Washington Post, Newsweek, Time Magazine, and the CFR's own Foreign Affairs magazine, along with long-winded opinion pieces by Bilderberg CFR member Zbigniew Brzezinski, calling for a return to the days of Rudyard Kipling's benevolent imperialism. And finally, the announcement that plans are indeed being drawn up for an intervention, end quote. What's going on? Is my camera just dropping? Okay. Now let's turn on the television and see for ourselves how the news is unpacked for our consumption. All, quote, news items are told in short bits, most running no longer than 30 seconds. A major news item may run up to a minute or a minute and a half. Voice-over snippets, short interviews, usually only a few sentences. Snippet. What the heck is happening? My eyelash, something is stuck in my eyelash, and it's fuzzy, and it's itching me. Okay. A few snippets of disjointed thought. The average hour and a half or a half-hour segment may report up to 40 items, all presented in a seamless style, followed by sports, weather, entertainment, and the idle banter between news readers. But are we witnessing real events from the real world? I don't know. I think a lot of this shit is made up, guys. Is that how complex world issues are seen in situ? Libya shoehorned into a 30-second soundbite, Afghanistan's 2,000 years of history into a 45-second interview dissected into 3 shorter interview bits, each consisting of 3 sentences of 6 words? Or is it a badly distorted picture that the newsreader tells you is reality? And that's the part. The newsreader telling you it's reality when literally, don't you remember the war that was happening in, oh God, what's it called? Ukraine. And, the news was just like in some kind of like square, and they were like showing all this crazy stuff, like all this battling and fighting going on outside. And then a guy literally on like Instagram who lives in an apartment on that square looks out, like takes a video, and he looks out his window and there's literally nobody out there. There's nothing going on. So like they can literally tell us anything's going on anywhere and make it seem that it is when it's really not. And then when they've convinced you that that's happening, you will make decisions about life and about just whatever, based on that BS information. So we've got to be able to realize that like nothing on the news is real. Stop paying attention to it. That is all BS. All of that is BS. Every single last bit of it. Given the way the news is presented, does your mind ever engage in a deliberate thought about any single item? No, it doesn't. Rather, you watch, merely take in the information and the format it is presented to you. Would it surprise you then if I told you that within 2 hours, most viewers could only remember vague summaries about what they saw? Middle East is on fire. More civilians were killed somewhere. Floods wiped out a large chunk of land in, yes, where? European economy is weak and another country has asked to be rescued. There was an earthquake in Japan and miraculously someone survived a 9-day ordeal buried under rubble. Wow, cool. Get that person on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Hi, Mom, I'm on TV. In this article on the cartelization of the news industry, Jeffrey Steinberg explains that, quote, even live coverage of car crashes, gang unalivings, rapes, natural disasters, wars, terrorist acts is served up on the basis of careful studies conducted at the neurological divisions of the leading medical schools. So medical schools are studying how all of this has an effect on you so they can weaponize it and use it against you. In recent decades, psychological warfare experts have unveiled a new pseudoscience called victimology, developed by the London Tavistock Institute, which is premised upon the theory that individuals can be put through trauma by being exposed to shockingly graphic visual accounts of violence, end quote. Why do you think all the movies are so graphically violent? Why do you think they're so graphically sexual? Why do you think they contain such insane themes? I mean, like, you cannot tell me even something as like seemingly benign as like Old Yeller, think about that. Think about that, okay? We all saw Old Yeller when we were a kid. Who among us did not cry at the end when he had to be put down? Who among us, right? Like, it's amazing the power that television and movies and TV shows and even commercials can have on our minds and our emotions. And you do not just give that shit away to a person. You would just let some person have access to you in that way. Why do we let the government and the world leaders, the world shakers and movers and shapers of policy, why do we let them do it? What are we doing? This type of brainwashing, according to Lonnie Wolf, is called, quote, selective retention. Television causes people to suspend their critical judgment capabilities because the combination of sound and images places the individual in a dreamlike state, which limits cognitive powers, end quote. If you were to summarize the news items, what would you say? That we are living in a violent and degraded society. In other words, a degraded view of man as animal, killing, unaliving, graping, Innocent people the world over. Secondary image, economic collapse, fear and hopelessness. You are left with this vivid image of society planted in your head. It is painted thus because no cognitive thought process was used to arrive at the real story behind the events. Hal Becker from the Futures Group contends that through the control of television news programming, he can create popular opinion by manipulating the way you think and act. Let's see. Quote, Americans think they are governed by some bureaucrats in Washington who make laws and hand out money. How wrong they are. Americans are ruled by their prejudices, and their prejudices are organized by public opinion. We are so conceited. Public opinion makes up our minds. It works our herd instinct like we are frightened animals, end quote. But there is a very big difference between a beast and a man. This difference lies in our search for eternal truth and for the meaning of life, which is what I'm trying to do here on this channel. Sift through the BS and get down to the truth. Truth always lies in the higher order of processes and the creative powers of the individual human mind. So it's a moral problem, which is why Jesus came and said, love the Father and love your neighbor, and to do good to those who treat you badly. Bless those who curse you. You know what I'm saying? That is the moral high ground. And there it goes, just sinking. Okay. Whatever. All right. Let's see. Where were we? So it's a moral problem. The problem of mankind's destiny that no animal can ever solve. Every generation must advance beyond that of the preceding generation. And that hope that will happen should be what's on the mind of the person who is dying of old age. That their life has meant something because it laid the foundation for a better life than they knew. On the other hand, people like Freud, Bertrand Russell, Eric Trist, Emery, Adorno, who believe there is no significant difference between man and animal, must deny the existence and relevance of eternal truth and our search for the meaning of life to render all men morally insane. Quote, television, with its overwhelming presence in your life, both creates popular opinion and simultaneously validates it, end quote. How is it done exactly? That's because your identity, thanks to television, is shaped by what others think about them. Quote, a constant and unending desire to act as you perceive others would want you to act, end quote. For example, quote, America is saying no to drugs, end quote, according to the latest polls by Gallup. Says a smiling face of a young journalist on CNN. Is that right? Are we supposed to believe this nonsense just because a poll says so or because CNN says so? As Becker says, quote, the world is in that box and it's there every night. Well, it's really, there's a lot more than that, 6 to 8 hours per day, end quote. And I will say that I remember that Say No to Drugs campaign, and that shit did not work on us at all. In fact, somewhere I still have a shirt that says, say perhaps to drugs. I always enjoyed wearing, it's a very Gen X thing, I think, to like wear funny t-shirts that say silly stuff. Because one of my coworkers, he's like maybe, I don't know, like 2 or 3 years older than me. He is forever wearing a silly t-shirt that says something silly. Shout out to UT. Okay, so in a sense, the news media generally tells one story, the saga of government as savior. On nearly every conceivable issue, domestic or foreign, news stories are designed to encourage readers and their viewers to look to government intervention as a solution. In other words, the establishment media are guilty of conscious and willing accomplices in the power elite's drive for global control. They work hand in hand, bro. Like, the news is the propaganda arm of these small club of evil shitlords that want to drain all the resources from the world, pretend like there's not an infinite supply of resources, make us feel like we are shitty, small, insignificant specks in some vast freaking universe that's ever expanding, which is bullshit, by the way. And yeah, dude, it's all a brainwash to make you feel small, powerless, and helpless. Don't buy into that bullshit. That is not true. Okay. Because in order to control the world, the power elite must conquer the public mind. And that's what I've been saying. Do not let them. Do not give them your attention. Attention is currency. Do not give it to them. And as Walter Lippmann reminds us, quote, news and the truth are not the same thing. Okay, the next header is called WikiLeaks and the Role of the Corporate Media. Let's have a look at one very recent example of media manipulation, WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks was started up in December of 2006. Wouldn't you say it was rather strange how an alleged upstart, quote, leak site was given star-studded attention from the corporate media such as the Washington Post and Time Magazine? And what's more, Time Magazine immediately did a lot more than just give credibility to WikiLeaks by giving the audience tips on how to best to decipher the site in such a way that seemed eerily familiar to George W. Bush's rhetoric immediately after 9/11. And I never really looked into the whole WikiLeaks thing that much, but it was giving psyop vibes to me, which is why I just didn't pay attention to it. It's like, where attention flows, that's where all their power goes, right? So don't give it your attention. It's kind of like ignore it and hopefully it'll go away. But literally, if we just ignore them, they are powerless. They only have the power that we have given to them. There's way more of us than there are of them. Okay, this is what the Time magazine had to say about it in January of 2007. Quote, by March, more than 1 million leaked documents from governments and corporations in Asia, the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, and the former Soviet bloc will be available online in bold new collective experiment in whistleblowing. That is, of course, as long as you don't accept any of the conspiracy theories brewing that WikiLeaks.org could be a front for the CIA or some other intelligence agency, end quote. And the fact that they called it a conspiracy theory lets you know it's fucking real. And that's what it was. It was a psyop. It was a CIA psyop. Because if they really wanted Julian Assange, they would go get his ass. You know what I mean? Let's be so for real. And all this crap about him getting on and pretending to be free in Russia and then pretending to having to flee there and go somewhere else. It's all a soap opera. What makes this whole thing so incomprehensible is that the Time article was written before WikiLeaks' first big leak in March of 2007. Why would Time even mention them if WikiLeaks were 2 months away from their coming out party? Because, like I said, it is all scripted. Why would they expose themselves in such a risky way unless, of course, they know something we don't? Are we to believe that Time magazine and establishment media would independently praise an alleged anti-establishment leak site which in the near future will expose all kinds of, quote, conspiracy theories? No. While at the same time telling its audience that these conspiracy theories circulating on the web are all crazy? No, bro. This is how they have to. This is the revelation of the method, okay? That's what it's called. This is how they cannot run these scams on us, these psyops, without telling us first what they're going to do, which is the whole reason The Simpsons exists, I believe, which is why the whole reason Hollywood exists, I believe, because they have to tell you what they're going to do. They don't have to come right out and tell you, but as long as they put it in some background picture or something in some commercial or whatever, in their encoded gematria language, then they've told you. It's up to us to discern and to sift and to detect the bullshit. And all this is based on Kabbalistic gematria. It's an encoded matrix reality. The Matrix, the movie The Matrix, and people say this jokingly, it's not a joke. That shit was a documentary, bro. It literally, that is how reality is, okay? It's all encoded and encoded scripted reality that is fed to you through this, the scrying mirror. And ever how much attention you give to it is ever how much power and control it's going to have over your mind and your life. Stop giving them your attention. Read a book with me instead. All right. Okay, just so long as you believe the correct conspiracy theories, you'll be all right, I guess, he says. Now read the following from Times Magazine. Quote, instead of a couple of academic specialists, WikiLeaks will provide a forum for the entire global community to examine any document relentlessly for credibility, plausibility, veracity, and falsifiability. End quote. Its organizers write on the site's FAQ page. Quote, they will be able to interpret documents and explain their relevance to the public. If a document is leaked from the Chinese government, the entire Chinese dissident community can freely scrutinize and discuss it. Quote, does that sound like a public relations propaganda piece written by the boys at Madison Avenue? End quote. It does to me. Sounds like a WikiLeaks, quote, how-to guide, end quote. Please understand you are being told what to think and how to interpret the information. Yes, of course, in order to interpret it, quote, correctly, you must have the right mindset. But in order to get the unsuspecting public into the right mindset, WikiLeaks needed the official blessing of the leading mainstream corporate media publications. Without the public support, this little project looked doomed to fail before it even got off the ground. Just like the freaking Q bullshit. That was another bullshit CIA psyop. All of these fake truthers and all of this, it's all bullshit, bro. All of it. It's all brainwashed bullshit. Okay? Okay. Without the public support, this little project looked doomed to fail before it even got off the ground. Is that why you had Rupert Murdoch's public relations guy on the board of directors of WikiLeaks? Is that the reason both Time Magazine and the Washington Post had to come out with supportive articles about WikiLeaks before anyone knew anything about them? Please understand, mainstream news limits your understanding of the world by what it chooses not to report and ignore. And that is so correct. It's what they're not freaking telling us that's important. Polling by numbers, the next header. In the early 20th century, the words, quote, propaganda and, quote, war became synonymous with one another. This was no accident. It was all a part of the effort to undermine the Christian, and it says Judeo-Christian, but there's no such fucking thing, okay, of the Christian legacy through an abolition of culture. Two men showed how to link the concepts of propaganda and war into one technique. One was Walter Lippmann, one of the most influential of political commentators of his time. It was Lippmann who in 1922 gave us the concept of stereotype, which was basically a continuation of the Jungian concept of the archetype by other means. Stereotypes can be created and manipulated by the gurus of mass communication and psychological warfare. The idea is not to make the target think too clearly or too profoundly about the images received, but instead to react in a Pavlovian manner to the stimulus it provides. The other was Edward Bernays, who you can literally go right now and watch. It's like a 3.5 hour documentary about Edward Bernays. It's called The Century of the Self, and it is right here on YouTube. I don't believe they've taken it down. But it's about how the whole idea of propaganda was created, who it was created by, which is Edward Bernays. And it's one of the few things that my uncle told me literally on his deathbed that I had to watch. So I did, obviously. Edward Bernays was Freud's nephew and one of the founders of public opinion manipulation techniques. In Bernays' own words, quote, it was, of course, the astounding success of propaganda during the First World War that opened the eyes of the intelligent few in all departments of life to the possibilities of regimenting the public mind. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. Whatever attitude one chooses to take toward this condition, it remains a fact that in almost every aspect of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by a relatively small number of persons, a trifling fraction of our 120 million U.S. citizens at the time, who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind, and who harness old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world. End quote. Which is why reading of the New Testament in particular is so important to immunize yourself against this. I feel like at this point, people reading the Old Testament is literally just confusing people, because we've got people out here trying to tell everyone that like I literally saw this chick post on YouTube last night, okay, that the sacrificial system will be brought back in the kingdom of heaven and sacrifices will still continue. And I'm like, are you nuts? Jesus is the final sacrifice, lady. No, we're not going to go back to the sacrificial system in heaven. That's bananas. But this is where this whole Hebrew roots, you gotta follow Torah to be saved. That is where it takes these people. Because it says an everlasting in the New Testament, they think that means like in perpetuity, forever and ever and ever. No, it doesn't. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I went way off course there. During World War I, as a young lad, Bernays served on the U.S. Committee on Public Information, an ingeniously named American propaganda apparatus mobilized by the U.S. government in 1917 to sell the wonders of righteous war to the unaware population as one that would make the world safe for democracy. Even though millions were killed on the battlefields of Europe, there was hardly any resistance to the carnage. By 1917, shortly before the U.S. entered the war, 94% of the British working class, an overwhelming majority of those who perished on the battlefields of Europe in the name of their king, had no idea what they were fighting for, other than the distorted image generated by the corporate media of the time that the Germans wanted to kill their king and destroy their country, which was Zionist propaganda. Every war since then, including the current, quote, war on terror, has used identical mass communications propaganda techniques. And these are all Schmeienists. This is their MO, bro. This is their game. This is the whole reason they're doing all of this, is to lead the world into their Schmeienist one world order where we all worship them and they live as like, rule the world as quote unquote God promised them 3,000 years ago. I'm literally beginning to think that the Old Testament is propaganda, bro. Like, it's just starting to look and feel that way, Far be it from me, but that's just, I don't know what it's looking like. All right. Anyways, okay. The manipulators then played upon this to undermine and distract the grasp of reality governing any given situation, and the more complex the problems of a modern industrial society became, the easier it became to bring greater and greater distractions to bear, so that what we ended up with was the absolutely inconsequential opinions of masses of people created by skilled manipulators assumed the positions of scientific fact, end quote. Today, public opinion polls are completely intertwined with current affairs television shows that offer public-ready, made-mick news items and easy-to-swallow bite-sized pieces. A, quote, scientific survey, end quote, of what people are said to think about an issue can produce in less than 24 hours, can be produced in less than 24 hours. Most of the polls announced by the world's leading media groups, such as CBS, NBC, ABC, CNN, Fox, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Time, Newsweek, Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, in fact, are coordinated at the National Opinion Research Center, where As much as it will amaze most people, a psychological profile was developed for every nation on earth. And I'm thinking now that they have our phones, they are collecting all kinds of data, that they're making a profile on each one of us as well through apps like Facebook and probably even YouTube, even this one. The idea of public opinion is not new, of course. Plato warned against it in his Republic over 2,000 years ago, as did Alexis de Tocqueville on its influence over America in the early 19th century. But until the 1930s, no one thought of using it to sway the masses towards a particular vision for decision making. As Michael Mendocino explains at length, quote, the belief that public opinion can be a determinant of truth is philosophically insane. It precludes the idea of the rational individual mind. Every individual mind contains the divine spark of reason. The divine spark sounds like Kabbalistic bullshit to me. And is thus capable of scientific discovery and understanding the discoveries of others. The individual mind is one of the few things that cannot therefore be averaged. End quote. Consider at the moment of creative discovery, it is possible, if not profitable, that the scientist making the discovery is the only person to hold that opinion about nature, whereas everyone else has a different opinion or no opinion. One can only imagine what a, quote, scientifically conducted survey, end quote, on Kepler's model of the solar system would have been shortly after he published The Harmony of the World. 2% for 48% against, and 50% no opinion. Quote, despite it is unprovable central thesis of psychoanalytic types, end quote, the interpretive survey methodology of the Frankfurt School became dominant in the social sciences and essentially remains so today. In fact, the adoption of these new supposedly scientific techniques in the 1930s brought about an explosion in public opinion survey use, much of it funded by Madison Avenue, end quote. That's because opinions can be easily counted. You can ask a group of people how they feel about something or whether they think that such and such a statement is true. You add the yes and subtract the no, with the larger number becoming the consensus, which apparently represent the opinion of the majority. Thus, America saying no to drugs is a manufactured consent by the pollsters on behalf of the financial elite, who are in fact the world's biggest drug pushers, as I have repeatedly shown in all my books. But no matter how many people agree or disagree with something, it doesn't make it true. After studying American polling numbers, Emery and Trist have come to a conclusion that, quote, people behave according to consensus, end quote, because they're fucking sheep. That's why. Have the fucking balls to go against the grain every once in a while. Fucking disagree if you disagree. We don't have to all agree all the time. This whole idea of like tolerance and stuff. Like, no, we don't tolerate evil. We don't tolerate bullshit. Anyways, and that's another brainwash, okay? Like, tolerance, man. We gotta be tolerant of other cultures and other belief systems. No, the fuck we don't. If it is bullshit, we don't tolerate it. The masses of great unwashed are so directed and influenced by the polls that, quote, they wouldn't dare break this social contract. They must do what others perceive that they should do. To do otherwise would cause psychological pain, end quote. They conclude that polls, quote, give meaning to their lives, end quote. After World War II, Paul Lazarsfeld, the director of the Bureau of Applied Social Research at Columbia University, and who especially pioneered the use of surveys to psychoanalyze American voting behavior, and by the 1952 presidential election, along with Madison Avenue advertising agencies, which is just propaganda agencies. Marketing and propaganda are the same thing, okay? Were firmly in control of Dwight Eisenhower's campaign, utilizing Lazarsfeld's work. The power of television and its hypnotic influence on the electorate became a reality in the 1952 elections. Quote, Batten, Barton, Durstein, and Osborne, the fabled BBD&O ad agency, designed Ike's campaign appearances entirely for TV cameras and as carefully as the Austrian painter's Nuremberg rallies. 1-minute spot advertisements were pioneered to cater to the surveyed determined needs of the voters. Quote, this snowball has not stopped rolling since. The entire development of television and advertising in the 1950s and 1960s was pioneered by men and women who were trained in the Frankfurt School's techniques of mass alienation. Frank Stanton went directly from the radio project to become the single most important leader of modern television. End quote. The whole idea behind this type of social brainwashing is to better understand the electorate's response to policy dictates of the elite. Quote, if you want people to believe something, then all you have to do is get a poll taken that says that it is so and get it publicized, preferably on television. End quote. The speaker is Hal Becker of the Futures Group. We are all elites test cases to be nudged and prodded in the right directions, all along making us believe that our decisions are based on our solid understanding of the body politics around us. Whereas in reality, we are, quote, a targeted population group whose messages are adjusted to the apparent needs of the masses. The results of the carefully constructed polls fed back to the population through the mass media provide the basis for shaping opinion. This process is created at Tavistock and described in one of the Tavistock manuals as, quote, message reaching the sense organs of persons to be influenced, end quote. It was this juggernaut that transformed most Americans who had never heard of Saddam Hussein and could never dream of showing you Iraq on a map into vile demonstration of hatred for an unknown enemy. Quote, enemy, who we were told wanted to kill our president and exterminate us as a country. Sound familiar? How could this be, you ask? Because these images of Saddam, world enemy number one, became an image of evil through the power of television, just as the Austrian painter and Stalin visually represented evil. How about a little test? Who, in your opinion, is the enemy today? The Chinese? The Korean? Putin? Or is it your fellow man? We have become the enemy, the source of destruction of society. If you believe the evil Freud, quote, not all men are worthy of love, end quote. That's wild, bro. Freud was an evil shit stain. I'm sorry, that's crazy. The sinister environmentalist movement, with their anti-human view of man, explicitly states this very fact in their degenerate propaganda. Save the little animals, kill the people, end quote. And that is where we're at with this Agenda 2030 project, and this climate control agenda propaganda that, like, humans are destroying the world with their CO2 output. Trees fucking breathe CO2, bro. It's a symbiotic relationship where they breathe in and then exhale oxygen that we breathe in. But they want to get rid of all the trees and all the people, and they want to cordon off certain areas, like national forestation areas, right? Where people can't even go, and relegate us all into 15-minute cities where we will eat the bugs and own nothing and be happy. That is their plans for us, and we have to fight it with every last strength in our pinky toe, okay? Still, we don't seem to get it, though. Why don't we get it? Why? Because the methodology of polling hasn't changed since its inception. Complicated issues are reduced to simple sets of choices. Saddam Hussein is a bad man. Do you agree? However, what is this assertion based on? On whose vision? How do you define badness? From the perspective of Iraq's population, the invading U.S. troops were bad and Saddam was good. These types of questions fit directly into the profile of Western Europe and North America. Keep it simple, stupid, end quote. And that is true, too, because, bro, I have so many people that I see on, social media sharing, I stand with Israel. I see it in churchyards. And I'm wondering, first of all, define Israel, okay? Who is Israel to you? Because I'm pretty sure whoever they're thinking Israel is not who Israel really is, okay? They're thinking it's some biblical people from the Old Testament when it's really a bunch of descendants of Eastern European Khazars cosplaying as people from the Old Testament that have formed an atheistic, Kabbalistic, geopolitical entity that they have named Israel. But people don't want to define terms anymore. We are talking about Freudian mass psychology and its appeal to infantilism, animal-like behavior, the touchy-feely thing, designed to bypass creative reasoning powers of every individual, informed by moral judgment and the eternal search for universal truth. In fact, when it comes to television, the issue of truth has never been, in fact, an issue. Television is not about the truth. It is about creating reality. It does not matter one bit whether the images you see on television are real or copied and pasted from past events, because people believe them to be real, immediate, and thus true. For example, in the March 2010 earthquake in Japan, mass media showed images of empty supermarket shelves, stating brazenly that Japan was undergoing the worst water rationing since World War II. However, the images of empty shelves were taken from stock photography and had little to do with the earthquake or lack of bottled water. In this way, reality as conveyed by nightly news obliterates truth every night. Emery and Trist indicated that, quote, the more a person watches television, the less he understands. And that's facts, bro. The more he accepts, the more he becomes dissociated from his own thought process. Television is much more magical than any other consumer product because it makes things normal. It packages and homogenizes fragmentary aspects of reality. It constructs an acceptable reality, the myth, out of largely unacceptable ingredients. To confront the myth would be to admit that one was ineffective, isolated, and incapable. Television images becomes and is the truth, end quote. In this manner, the nightly stories on your favorite television news show serve to reinforce your opinion of what the world around you looks and smells like. And what is that opinion? That we live in a world of unspeakable violence and perversion, that human beings are degrading and violent creatures who murder, rape, destroy, and spread hatred everywhere they go in the name of whateverism happens to be in vogue at the moment. And I think that is very apt. And I think we're going to start right there because, I can do about an hour and a half and then I need to stretch my legs. But yeah, dude, like if you look at it, that is what they would see. It seems like they want us to believe. And when you really, if you just go out, they act like, oh my God, the racism and all this shit. But if you just go out and walk around and talk to people, you find that they're generally pleasant, easy to get along with. I mean, of course, we're going to have our exceptions of like socially inept or, awkward, whatever. But like overall, people are people and they just want to get along with other people and, usually help their common man. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. And I will say also, certain demographics are targeted to be even more dehumanized and more brainwashed than other demographics of people. But we're all targeted. And that's the whole point of like what I'm trying to tell people here. And this is the truth, that they have been brainwashing us for a century at least. Anyways, I'm going to go now, and I love you guys, and I hope you have the best rest of your Sunday evening, and I'll see you tomorrow again. I need to sit down. Maybe I'll go tomorrow and get a new phone because I want to do some perfume content. I've got like literally so much to review. I've gotten more stuff in the mail, and it's just turned into an overwhelming pile of just bottles of stuff everywhere. Anyways, so if you're a girl or a dude that likes scents, stick around for that. Otherwise, the BS detecting shall continue. God bless you and peace be upon you.